it can get a little uncomfortable with a business owner, when you're looking at weekly payroll is, 5 times what it was just a short period of time ago. And you get a little apprehensive, a little nervous.
Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Vision driven by Auto Body News. As always, I'm your host, Cole Strandberg. Today's episode is a special one, not just because of the topic, which I think is fantastic, equipment, facility design, and long-term strategy in collision repair, but primarily because of the guest, Gregg Strandberg, who happens to be my dad. Gregg is the founder, chairman, and former CEO of FilterWorks USA, now known as Autotality, and someone who's lived and breathed the industry for decades. Heck, he raised me around it. From building one of the leading collision repair equipment companies in the country to guiding the business through rapid growth and ultimately a private equity partnership, Gregg has seen it all. In this conversation, we talk about how equipment and facility design can become growth levers, not cost centers. We also dive into what it's like running a family business, navigating transitions, and the trade-offs between family business ownership and private equity. Whether you're outfitting a shop, building your first location, or thinking about your long-term future, this episode is packed with real-world wisdom from what I would say is my favorite guest I've ever had. Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by Hunter Engineering. Today, alignments and ADAS calibrations are two sides of the same coin. If a shop is doing one, it may as well do the other. Unfortunately, many collision shops aren't doing either, but they can start right away with Hunter Engineering's new Hawkeye Elite expandable configuration. Hawkeye Elite X is a world-class alignment and ADAS system that's expandable to Hunter's ultimate ADAS for laser-guided static calibrations. Future-proof your business by keeping alignments in-house now and upgrading to calibrations as soon as you're ready. Enjoy the show. Gregg Strandberg, aka Dad, thanks for joining us here on the Collision Vision.
My pleasure. Yeah, I really enjoy listening to the podcast. Glad to be a part of it.
And a return guest. I still hear and get a hard time from folks about our first time together where you said, wow, we're like 60 episodes in. Thanks finally for the call. So thanks for that. It was a funny remark that lives on in infamy, if in my opinion, from my perspective, but always fun to connect. We were just before we hit record talking about vacation and travel plans and your nonprofit activity, all sorts of fun stuff. Want to bring us back to business. Of course, when we had a series announced about equipment, financing, choosing the right equipment, I was like, well, I'm a little bit biased, but quantitatively, I don't think there's somebody out there who's put in more equipment for the collision repair industry across the country in history than you. And so before we dive in, would love to hear the FilterWorks story and how that all began.
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't mind being the 60th guest, just to
all right, good. Let's put that to rest.
The 59 before were excellent, and I'm pleased to even be number 60, honestly. And now 150 also, I think, something like that.
Somewhere in that range. Yeah, it's been coming up on 3 years. Hard to believe.
That works. Well, I love to tell the FilterWorks story because it's very personal, and it was a great journey for sure. And it started in 1988, and the business was founded to provide air conditioning filter service to South Florida businesses. So just change their AC filters. About a year after being in business, a fellow by the name of Corey Rome, who was a paint booth filter expert, walked through my door, introduced me to the world of paint booth equipment. And at the time, it was kind of exciting because new technology was just starting to come to the U.S. from Europe, heated downdraft technology. A lot of great manufacturers out of Italy were just starting to get their equipment to the U.S. And we had found that the customers who had made these purchases of this heated downdraft equipment were having just a very difficult time getting them installed. It's very involved. It requires concrete work, permits, electrical work, fire suppression, cutting holes in roofs, just a lot to get a paint booth turnkeyed. So no one was really set up to do that, prepared to do it from start to finish. make the process as seamless for the customer as possible. And that's the opportunity that we recognized is, why don't we embrace these challenges, make them our own, and let our customers worry about what they do best, and that's repair cars. So we aligned, first of all, with a great manufacturer here in the US, met them at the NACE show, and ended up handling their product, and still do for many, many years. Great relationship, very supportive organization. The fact that they were made here made parts accessibility very nice and easy for us too. So, and they kind of grew with us. They were new to the U.S. when we started taking on that product, and they grew along with us. But it was that was the genesis of getting into the collision repair equipment industry, was seeing this opportunity that had just arrived from Europe, and trying to get in a position, our customers in a position to be up and operational far more quickly than what they were experiencing at the time.
What a different industry it was at that point in time, both from a collision repair perspective and certainly a collision repair equipment perspective. You mentioned some of the gaps you were trying to fill in terms of a lot of the ancillary pieces and the key pieces of installing paint booth equipment. What did the collision industry look like at that time? I mean, that's pre-consolidation, totally different landscape than it is today.
Very much so. Yeah, great question. And it's kind of fun to look back and reflect and look at how far the industry really has come. At the time, most of the paint booths that were installed in the country were cross flow booths bought out of a catalog, $5,000 piece of equipment, no heat involved. The lighting wasn't great, just not great equipment, and not designed for high production, like heated downdraft technology would bring to the industry. And that's what we're seeing throughout these collision repair centers. I mean, there are very, very few heated downdrafts at the time. So very, very different looking. Like I said, no consolidators. So it was a fun industry. I just got to meet so many wonderful people, body shop owners and operators. Many of them were family shops, and built just many, many great relationships, many of which I have still today, and enjoy those. Just great people working hard in an industry that was less sophisticated, but they figured it out. They found a way to get these cars repaired, get them back on the road the best way they could. And, repairs were high quality despite the lack of the quality of equipment that we have today.
Totally cool. And you mentioned the friends. I mean, we just talked about it. You have one of those industry friends coming over to the house, headed your direction as we speak. So those relationships run through very, very deep. Also, coming into the industry, coming up on a decade ago myself, what an awesome thing that was to jump in. My last name was very, very recognizable. All the nice things people had to say about you was really, really cool, and gave me such a tremendous head start in the industry. Today, obviously, on the back of 30 plus years, I didn't math this before, but 37 years now since the founding of FilterWorks. Today, that business is still running strong. It's called Autotality. Talk to us about that organization today, and then pontificate for me, if you would. What a tremendous success. That is a household name for the collision repair industry across certainly the Southeast and beyond. What do you think drove that success?
I think a lot of it had to do with an extreme focus on our customers. We just took really, really good care of them. And then, of course, the affiliation I mentioned earlier about who we affiliated with as far as equipment providers and manufacturers, just aligned ourselves and had the good fortune to align ourselves with a quality paint booth manufacturer, a quality frame equipment manufacturer. These guys were and continue to manufacture some of the best equipment offered in collision repair. So that alliance was very, very helpful. And then taking a different perspective and embracing the challenge of installation, and specifically in the Florida market, permitting was very difficult. Another thing that we did that was a little different at the time was we really focused a lot on layout and design. A lot of our customers had, hey, the booth fits here, let's put it here. And it worked. It got them by. They made it work. Well, looking at it, a little more from a scientific approach, let's look at workflow, at process. How can we maybe improve your facility and maximize the square footage that you guys have? Because we're going from a cross draft booth that's capable of 2 vehicles a day to a heated downdraft paint booth that's capable of 6 to 8 vehicles per day. That's a big difference in production. Now you need to make sure your facility is fully used to take advantage of that investment that you've made in a heated downdraft paint booth. And that became our focus. And it was interesting because we'd walk into shops and say, do you have access to any drawings of your facility? And the answer was no, 99% of the time. What do we do then? We taught ourselves how to hand measure shops, start with a great plan. Once you have a drawing and you have it in AutoCAD, now you can look at endless alternatives, endless options as far as equipment placement goes. So whether it's a greenfield, that makes it nice and easy. A brand new facility, love working on those, or an existing facility, those are more challenging, but it's kind of a fun challenge because you want to turn that into the most productive facility you can. And I gained great insights and ideas from my customers over the years that I could use moving forward. That experience helped a lot. One example of that is a customer in Sarasota had a beautiful office, really nice, but it was completely blocked off. There was no view. The customer could not see from the office in the collision center at all. We started talking about, what if we moved your paint shop up towards the office? It's the quieter part of the repair. It's not the major surgery. So, the car is much better looking to a non-professional collision repairer. And then the paint booths are very nice looking too. And we can put windows down the side. So they decided to do that, put the paint shop closest to the office, put some windows in the office, and their customers could actually look out into the shop and directly into the paint booth. And that was a plus to the customers. The shop owner loved it. The paint technicians didn't particularly love it at first. Some of them threatened to paint the windows so people couldn't look in at them doing their work. But a lot of them embraced it, enjoyed it too. And but that was just one example of kind of a unique approach to setting your collision repair facility, not just for production, but also for, as a showplace too.
I want to take a deeper dive into that because the layout and design piece of the puzzle is super important. Shout out mom, right? For those who don't know, my dad, of course, my mom, my wife, myself, we were all involved in the business under one roof for 6 years. And I'm not going to ask my dad here, his favorite employee or coworker, not going to put you on the spot like that. But my mom ran all layout and design for the business. Tremendously talented. So let's talk about design and equipment strategy for a facility. When a shop is planning or redesigning a facility, where the heck do you start? How do you think about that?
You do start with a drawing. You start with a blueprint, whether it's an existing facility or new. That's the place to begin. And then let's take a deep dive into what you'd like to accomplish with your collision repair facility. What are the goals? What kind of work are you going to be doing? What kind of vehicles are you going to be focused on? Size of vehicle, weight of the vehicle is very important too. What kind of volumes do you hope to achieve in this facility? Let's talk some about that too. And when we gather data like that, just get the basics. And of course, there are going to be land restrictions too that have to be looked at. But it's kind of a starting point is let's take a good hard look at what your goals are for the facility and the customers you're going to target for that facility too. And let's start there and work from that. And a lot of consultation with our end user customer, very, very important. And then we do like to draw on the expertise of the people supplying them with paint, any other kind of equipment provider relations they might have. We'd like to take advantage of those too, because there's so much knowledge from people that have worked in our industry, and I want to know what they bring too. And then of course you want to consult with an architect as well. Let's talk about what our electrical requirements are. Let's talk about the challenges that this particular building or piece of property might lend us as well. And we have had issues where customers have purchased land that's not zoned appropriately. That's something you want to really avoid because it can be a real challenge in many markets to rezone property. So those are some of the basics we look at when we get started.
Makes total sense. And I'd point out too, specifically in Florida, other major markets are going to be the same way. To install a paint booth, it's essentially building a building, right? You need to have a general contractor involved, a mechanical contractor involved. In our case, you got both. You became that contractor to meet the needs, which I think is a real differentiator in that story as well. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see when it comes to equipment layout and or facility layout rather, and equipment planning?
Really, more than anything, I think not enough focus on it initially. We want to start working on that from the very beginning. We want to look at how we're going to plan the facility. We don't want to start with an architect who does not have experience in our space. we want to start with people who do have that experience, and there are a lot of them who do that. You mentioned mom, my wife.
Shout out.
Shout out to Nancy. She did a super job. She's one of the foremost nationwide in equipment lab design and for collision repair, and it's a lot of fun to talk about at parties. Most people just their eyes start glazing over.
Yeah, high school was a blast with telling everybody what my parents did. That was awesome.
I'll bet. You never invited me in for career day or anything.
For the record, I don't think we had career day. Yeah,
Okay.
That'd be very sad.
If so, it probably wouldn't have been a whole lot of fun, but we would have found a way to make it fun, I think, because it is a great industry, obviously, as we know, and it would be fun to share that with young people who maybe want to enter into our industry as well. But where were we? We're talking about, lab design. So we want to get some input from some people with real experience and specifically in collision repair. Some of the problems I saw in the early days, specifically in car dealerships, where they'd have a great architect, did a great job with the dealership, but had no experience in the collision repair industry at all. And you wouldn't believe some of the locations of paint booths I saw in the early days. They were nothing but a hindrance that the body shop manager had to manage and work around. It just was unfortunate. It was it was in the back of the dealership. They didn't give it the appropriate attention that it needed from a design perspective. And it's not that hard. The experts are out there. Please make my email available. I'd be happy to help and direct people to find assistance in that regard, because it is so important. Take the time. I think what I described with that particular instance of an architect who didn't have experience, I think that's mostly gone by the wayside. I think most facilities you see now are well thought out. Some of the existing facilities, maybe not as much, because they don't have access to a drawing. It's worth it. Make the investment. Do it yourself. I mean, we'd hand measure shops all the time. You've done it. I've done it many, many times. And a lot of our representatives did that. It was graph paper, a tape measure, a laser measure tool, and a pencil. And we would spend hours, no charge to our customers, to develop this. And then once we had it committed to paper, and we measured everything, all the emergency exits, we located electrical panels that could potentially be a problem with paint booth location. Height of roll-up doors, very, very important. You don't want a paint booth up against a roll-up door and the roll-up door is not tall enough for the paint booth doors to open. Just little things like that will occur if you don't plan appropriately and start with a really good, accurate drawing. So it's the best way to start.
I remember at the time keeping things in perspective, like facility layout, equipment. That was our focus. That was number one. Whereas oftentimes that was 10th or 15th on the list of kind of action items for our clients. Pretty cool over the last couple of years, though, to hear some of the big leaders in the industry talk about the importance of that. Mike Anderson, for example, he's been saying, hey, if you are planning on adding or replacing a paint booth in the next 5 years, do it now and make sure you can handle high roof vehicles with these Rivian delivery vehicles coming up, Bright Drop, Sprinter van opportunities. Go ahead and take the plunge. So there is conversation around that, which I think is really, really cool and really important. So much of a body shop it's a living, breathing thing, right? You can move it around. You can kind of adjust as you grow and as your needs change. So many things you can't adjust. Paint booth location certainly comes to mind. How do you think about balancing the future needs of a company who has growth in mind with today's needs?
Yeah, that also is a great question and often not considered enough either. I mean, let's talk about potential growth when we're designing a facility, what the ultimate goals are. So you want to meet your current needs and you want to be efficient in that way. But I think one of the mistakes that can be made is we shortcut a little bit, maybe with paint booth size, maybe with frame machine size to save a little money on the front end, but it's less versatile. And it doesn't allow us to repair the same types of vehicles that a bigger piece of equipment or one specifically designed with additional features that will allow it to handle different equipment or different vehicles as they continue to evolve. I think because of the evolution of the vehicle and how it's just dramatic. I mean, it's accelerating like I've never seen it before. You want to be as prepared as you can. You want to really be informed before making equipment buying decisions. And you want some input from the vehicle manufacturers, the OEMs, of the vehicles that you plan to repair. Another thing that I neglected to mention that's worth a little discussion too is when laying out a facility, I think a lot of attention needs to be paid to accommodate technician comfort and safety. Let's make sure these guys are the ones getting it done day in and day out. Just in our business, our technicians were the ones getting it done day in and day out. Those guys were tireless. They were the ones on the front line. And that's the way that technicians in the collision repair industry are. These are important, some of the most important parts of our industry. To get a vehicle safely restored, you have to have technicians who care. So care about them. Let's make sure we're making them as comfortable as possible. Some of our customers have climate controlled their collision centers. It's expensive, but it does impact productivity, allows you to attract great technicians. If we can supply lift equipment that'll raise the vehicle to make it a little bit more comfortable for the technician as well, let's do that. That expense is going to pay you back. Let's make this facility as safe. Oh, lighting. Let's make sure we have plenty of lighting in the facility for the technician as well, so they can see exactly what it is they're doing. It's also good for morale too, right? It's cool, comfortable, clean working environment. We did a lot with vacuum systems too, vacuum sanding to keep the facility clean, to keep the technicians healthy. And then of course, safety equipment. All right, let's talk about fresh air breathing for just a second. Let's make sure the technicians have all the equipment necessary to do this job, be productive, and live a long, healthy life. It's not that hard to do.
That's been an absolute area of positive development, I think, in our industry. In your early days, I remember hearing stories of painters going in with t-shirts, no fresh air breathing, maybe smoking a cigarette, painting a car. I think for the most part, these are now table stakes and things that are happening. And it's super important to make this a great place to work that allows us to fix cars appropriately. So much of what you talked about too is going to influence OEM certifications, things like
Sure.
lighting, things like safety systems, things like the right equipment. Huge impact where there's a very clear ROI. In terms of scalability, one story that comes to mind is Lauderdale Collision, Lauderdale BMW,
Oh,
Holman organization. Shout out Steve Suppy, a former guest on the Collision Vision and a super guy.
mhm.
You guys did that facility before I joined the business. And for years, there were 2 or 3 paint booths. I forget, maybe 3, and then a pit right next to the third one. And they knew they were going to grow. They knew they didn't have the capacity needs to put in a booth right away, but they went ahead and had us include that in the future drawings. So flipping a permit on was a lot easier. It was ready to go. The concrete work was done. It was just standing up a cabin, throwing in the mechanical, and off we go. Super cool. And I think that's a great way to think about, all right, how do we do what we need to do for now, being cognizant and conscious of our budget and the ROI, but also how do we plan on growth in the future? I thought that was a pretty cool example.
That's a great example. Yeah, because the money savings too, when they go to add this equipment now, is substantial. They went ahead and they had the roof penetrations already handled and capped. They had the electrical supply right there. They had plenty gas supply as well. So talk about a quick, easy addition and a huge money saver for the customer too. Brilliant. Love to see it. And it's amazing over the years how many facilities have needed that additional equipment much more quickly than they expected to. Let's prepare for that whenever possible.
Yep.
Absolutely, yes.
Keep room for growth. Absolutely. Now, I'll set the stage. Eventually, this business evolved from paint booth equipment into frame measuring and welding into everything turnkey automotive, hunter, lift equipment, things of that nature. Really a cool evolution. When you view equipment categories, in your opinion, what kind of categories of equipment offer the highest ROI for shops today?
So when I think about that, I think about maximizing our square footage, right? We've got a limited amount of space. Let's go ahead and make the most of that. We talked earlier today about cross drafts, being able to produce 2 cars versus a heated downdraft that can produce 6 to 8 cars. Think about that. They're the same square footage, same footprint, essentially. It might be a little bit more for a paint booth down, a heated downdraft paint booth mechanical. We're talking about very little bit of additional space being used. So that, and let's look at the frame equipment too. I mean, we like to put some of our frame machines in ground. For some of our customers, that's the perfect fit. Um, I think those are the types of things that we want to keep in mind. And when we're making the purchase and we're looking at heated downdraft technology, it's going to give you an unbelievable return on investment. When you're looking at the proper frame equipment, there's so many benefits to that, to having the right equipment. Technician satisfaction being one of them. When you're looking at frame equipment, you really want to have something that's going to repair the cars that are coming into your vehicle in a wide array, a wide variety. I'm very, very impressed with some of the manufacturers and how they've evolved in especially in the frame machine and paint booth arena. With frame equipment, they've gotten bigger. The jigging systems are universal now, and the systems show you on the screen how to build a jig to repair a particular vehicle. But these are the types of things that are giving you return on investment. These are the kind of things that are attracting technicians that are efficient too. That are getting a lot of hours from those stalls, that space that you're allocating for them. So, I mean, so frame equipment, paint booth equipment are two ways to really, really maximize, or you'll get a great return on investment if you invest in the best there.
No question. And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, yeah, no question. And when we talk about that too, the technological innovation in vehicles, of course, we talk about it all the time, but in equipment as well, to keep up with the innovation in vehicles, that continues to evolve, maybe short of paint booth equipment. I think that's largely, we've had some minor adjustments and innovation there. With advances in that technology, with that specialization, what do you think the risk of like future proofing and getting yourself ready for continuous change looks like, and what can we do about that?
I think it's education. You really have to stay on top of our industry more than ever before, just because of the rapid evolution. Before we leave the last question, though, one thing I neglected to mention that's definitely worth consideration is spa welders, right? We've seen them in shops now. I think they continue to get better, more versatile, more reliable, because it's a big deal. These spot welders. I think that's another area that we continue to see evolution and worth real consideration for most shops out there, I'd say. So take a look at those as well.
A great point. No question. I want to shift gears a little bit. I'd be remiss not to talk about the Filterworks and Autotality story a little bit more. Anytime we're together, I want to talk about private equity. I want to talk about family businesses because I think it was a super cool story. You eventually partnered with a private equity group that, of course, took the company to the next level. 7 acquisitions, 2.5 years under your leadership, quadrupled revenue, quadrupled headcount. What led to the decision to bring on a partner at that point in time? And I asked that really knowing the answer because I was involved in those conversations, but love your perspective on that world.
Yeah, I really found that we were in a position where we were being pulled to grow. I mean, there's a lot of focus on the necessity of growth to accommodate our changing customer base. The consolidators were growing rapidly, their demands were growing, and it was difficult to keep up, I think. And after having run a business, owning and running a business for many, many years, you can tend towards being a little conservative because you've been through the good times and the bad. And I think I recognized a real need for serious investment in growth. And I had to be honest with myself. Was I willing to put it out there and to extend myself from a financial perspective to grow this business to the point that it needed to be grown? Private equity offers a great avenue for bringing money and capital into a business and facilitating that growth. And I think that had a lot to do with it. As we were pulled to grow, we were trying to keep up, and we did grow a lot. It can get a little uncomfortable with a business owner. When you're looking at weekly payroll is 5 times what it was just a short period of time ago, and you get a little apprehensive, a little nervous. Having private equity involves kind of it's a security because and it's a different perspective too. I did things a certain way because they worked. Well, it doesn't mean they were the best and most efficient way. And when you have private equity come in, they're looking at it from a whole new way, and it's all about growth. In that case, they really want to propel growth. And then the key there is partnering with the right people, people you like and trust, which we were fortunate enough to align with really nice people, good to work with. And I'm still involved with them today, and I enjoy our time together. So that had a lot to do with it too, being approached by the right group, I think, at the right time. That's kind of my perspective. How do you feel about that?
Couldn't agree more. When I speak with folks who are considering partnering with private equity, I think that's like the perfect use case is when you feel you're getting pulled into growth. You've taken it as far as not as far as you can, but as far as you're comfortable taking it. But it would make sense to have that additional capital access to really smart people and strategic thinkers who are going to facilitate with their own capital and giving you some chips off the table, some of that growth, and step right into what your customer base is asking of you and wanting of you. I think for me, it was legitimately a better education than business school, going from a family run business into a private equity backed business. And there are pros and cons for each, but to see that transition was super interesting. From your perspective, well, before I get here, if a private equity group says nothing is going to change post transaction, they're wrong. They might not be meaning to be wrong, but there are changes. That's the nature of it. They're buying or investing in this business to improve it, to grow it, to scale it, to make it better than it is today. So there will be changes. From your perspective, what did those changes look like? You went from being a business owner and CEO to being a private equity backed CEO. And I know your life got a little bit different throughout that transition.
It did. Looking in terms of not just focusing on organic growth, I think, and looking at growth through acquisition, which is a great way to grow. And that's something we didn't even really consider at the time.
Yep.
And when when there is rapid growth, the way you manage and handle a business simply has got to change. Before the acquisition, I knew everybody within our business and could reach out and talk to everybody. Well, when you're growing that quickly and you're acquiring other businesses, things have got to change. Certainly, financial controls have to change, right? You need a CFO. You need someone who's absolutely dialed into bringing computer systems. Those are the kind of things when it's a family-owned business, they can wait because you can work through those. You're focused on sales and then delivering on what you sell, having a happy workforce and a good, or a great culture. When private equity comes in, it is a completely different perspective, and they really want to have a firm handle on the finances and constantly looking at the KPIs. Things that we did fundamentally, but far less structured. So bringing structure to the business is critical. You have to have that framework if you're going to do a lot of add-on acquisitions and grow the business that way. Major change there. And of course, having access to capital too. I didn't like to take on debt, and that is it's good and bad. It's certainly not great if you plan on aggressive growth. And again, our customers were calling us to grow, or wanting us to grow. But those are some of the differences. It has to become a little bit less personal, and that can be a good thing too, because I stayed involved as CEO for 3 years after selling, and it allowed when it's yours and you've raised it from nothing. It's personal, and a lot of it's personal. Your decisions are how your customers affected, how your team, the people who work with you day to day, work for you day to day. Everything's personal. When it's after an acquisition, you can be a little bit more, and like you mentioned, taking chips off the table, which is a very nice thing too. But it allows you to think strategically more than ever before. And then you also have people that you can rely on. So when you do want to take a break, a little time off, you're not tied to the office. That was a benefit I found in working with private equity too. You'd have a CFO and a president who could handle things when you were gone, could make the decisions that you would have had to have made prior to acquisition. So those are some of the changes. We would buy our vehicles 2 or 3 years old at auction and run them and ground, maintain them well and run them hard. You'd lease those vehicles in private equity. They have great reasons for doing all this. And the financial controls were fantastic, which was not a focus of ours. Ours was driving sales, of course, basics, that you have to do to run a successful business. But for us, the focus was just driving sales and delivering the best product and service we could. And that continues to be a focus, but you have teams, almost silos to an extent, where the finance guys are working on that. Your sales team's doing their thing. The installation and service departments are well looked after. You spend a lot of time with an org chart. I didn't do that prior to acquisition, right?
Yeah.
The org chart was pretty straightforward, but that's an important thing. I mean, if you're looking strategically to grow, to have an org chart, make sure you have the right people in place and who reports to whom. Very, very important.
Man, I nailed it. There's so much to dive a little deeper into, and this is not a episode or a series based on private equity, but I think you nailed so many things, man. When it's a family business, when you're growing like crazy, that infrastructure and that org chart sort of gets organically built out as it's needed. You get pulled into creating these things. When it's private equity, they build all of that with a purpose, right? The vision, the visualization that comes to my mind when it's family run and owned, you're building the airplane on your way falling out of the sky and you're figuring it out. Whereas private equity, they want to make sure every nut and bolt is in place before you even take off. It forces you to think differently. Another big one too is cash flow. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about private equity is, oh, we got tons of money, all good. Yeah, tons of money for sure, but debt too. There's not that cash sitting in the bank to take to auction typically and go buy these vehicles used. It makes more sense from a cash flow perspective to maybe lease these vehicles or finance these vehicles and make sure it's healthy. But you don't have that typically, that large nest egg kind of sitting in the bank for a rainy day. It's a lot leaner, which is somewhat counterintuitive. How should I know we talked a little bit about this, but if you were in a founder CEO shoes right now, kind of debating taking on outside capital or pursuing an exit, when would you feel the right time is? I know we just pontificated about that a little bit, but today is different than it was back in 2018, 2019 as well.
Yeah, it depends obviously on your personal goals. You know, your age, how long you want to keep, being fully engaged in the business. What do you see on the horizon in the industry that might influence if it's the right time for you? One of the things that so I was part of a Vistage organization, which is awesome. If you haven't looked into that, I encourage everybody to take a look at Vistage. It's a great organization. It's basically you get together with a group of like-minded business individuals once a month in a very structured environment. You have a chairperson who kind of guides you and works with you and works through challenges in your business with you. And you see these folks, you see your Vistage chair twice a month, and then you see the group once a month. Our Vistage chair was a great man named Harvey Gelman. May he rest in peace. He's just a super individual. He brought a fresh perspective to my business. And the thing that he told me is, he said, as a CEO and founder, you want to be a visionary and you want to be a talent scout. Well, being a visionary is going to help you decide when it's the right time for you to maybe step aside or partner with private equity and maybe start a transition process too, because you're seeing what's coming for your business. You're seeing what's coming for the industry. When you're evaluating that, is it comfortable for you? Do you think you're set up and have the tools to continue to drive growth in your business? Or is it a great time to start handing off what you've learned and what you know and help the next generation get prepared for success in the changing market ahead? It's a lot of self-evaluation, I think, prior to partnering with private equity or deciding it's time to start to work on an exit strategy. I guess that's kind of how I would, being the visionary and being consistently and constantly looking at your business and how to improve it. When you start to see things that are less comfortable for you, maybe it's time to start looking to outside resources. On the other hand, if you want a capital infusion to fuel growth, that would have been a good option for us too at the time. Not one I really ever considered. And I guess in evaluating myself, I'm not sure how comfortable I would have been with that. I think the avenue we chose was a great fit for us at the time.
Yeah, there is no one size fits all right answer, right? It's all about you and taking inventory of your goals, yourself, your personality. No question. I've heard a million stories from you. We have some together, certainly during our time at Filterworks and Autotality. Is there a story that stands out from your time building the company? Something that shaped your perspective as a leader, or just that you look back super fondly on?
Obviously, working with you guys was just
Oh,
absolutely wonderful. Really, I mean, what a great time when it was happening. For the 6 years we were able to work together. It just it was a time I really appreciated, because I knew, it wasn't going to be forever. And I loved that. I think that it was just a fantastic experience working with family and us working together so well with your wife, Belle, and your mom, Nancy. Just a great experience, a fun experience. And the relationships we built are something I won't forget, with many of our industry partners. I mentioned Harvey Gelman. The thing he brought to our business was absolutely amazing. Things that I thought were not possible to do. And he would simply ask me, why not? Have you tried? And my answer would be, I just don't think it can be. Well, you don't know really if you don't try, do you? And by him pushing me in certain respects, it absolutely changed the business. And sitting here today, it shocks me the influence and the effect those changes had on our business. Absolutely incredible. And they were pretty simple ideas, but can't see the forest for the trees sometimes, right? You grew up in it, you built it, you feel that it's, this is what it is. And some of the things that you felt were hard and fast rules weren't necessarily. And Harvey pushed me to think about things a little differently. So having an outside perspective from a peer or a mentor, I think can be. And I met Harvey in 2011, so I was no young guy in this business by any means. I thought I kind of had seen a lot of it and didn't need that much outside input. Boy, was I wrong. Even at that age, I wasn't 25 at that time. So even at that age, I was shocked at what someone with more experience than I could bring to it, and just a fresh set of eyes from an educated person who cares about your success. And Vistage is a great way to go about that. I'm sure there are many other groups around that offer the same thing, because as a business owner, you don't have a board traditionally. You don't have the people that report to you are going to often reflect what they know you want to say in many cases. But having an outside person come in and really give you a different perspective, I can't say enough about that, and would encourage anybody to do that, to seek out, find a mentor, find a peer who maybe has gone through some of the same things you have, or might have a fresh perspective of your business.
Invaluable, right? In the framework of collision repair, 20 groups are an amazing thing. Vistage is an amazing thing. Entrepreneurship can be a very, very lonely road. In our case, I hope you didn't feel that way, because we had family and great friends. I mean, gosh, man, the relationships that were created and bolstered throughout that family business journey were insane. Shout out to Uncle Marion, for example. A year ago, we were over in Auto Mechanica in Germany together. So some really, really cool things. And man, when family business works, it works. And in our case, it certainly did. So, you've been extremely generous with your time. I know you remain a busy guy, multiple boards that you're involved in, still chairman of the board with the family business. Just got a new board seat with a nonprofit that you've been involved in today, which is super, super cool. Looking back to this point, obviously many, many more things to come and accomplish. What are you most proud of in what you created and built?
I think I'm really proud of our reputation, the reputation that we had with our industry to just do the right thing. It's integrity, it's professionalism. That's what I heard about our organization, and I just loved it. The people who made up our company, and continue in many cases to make up our company, just super committed, hardworking people who got the job done. And they helped obviously build that relationship or that reputation for professionalism and integrity. That is such an important part of a business culture. And I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of. And then I got to be honest with you, you're walking around with you now and seeing the respect that you're given in this industry makes me very proud too. Nobody knew me at Auto Mechanica in Germany, but a lot of people knew you. I already feel like a dinosaur.
Oh, stop it, man. Stop it. Oh, it's super cool that we get to do stuff like this now, and can't express my appreciation for you, what you built, what you continue to do all the time. And it's cool to do that full circle and very publicly here, and really appreciate spending time with you in this forum. And then we get to go on a little vacation together this weekend too. So we'll keep the good times rolling. You mentioned folks can reach out if they have any facility questions. I know you have access to a ton of resources. I am going to go ahead and include your email address in the show notes for anybody who'd like to reach out, along with the website for Autotality and anything else. We'll talk online about what exactly to include. But man, what an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time here on this Wednesday afternoon at the time of the recording. Really cool to be able to do this. So thank you for joining us on the Collision Vision.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
That is a wrap on today's episode of the Collision Vision with Gregg Strandberg, founder, mentor, and of course, my dad. In addition to some key takeaways, if that one didn't bring a tear to your eye there at the end, I don't know what to tell you. You must be heartless. I kid. If there is one key takeaway, it's this: your facility and your equipment are not just tools, they're strategic assets. When designed right with long-term goals in mind, alongside of today's needs, they can make you and your team more efficient, your brand more premium, and your business more valuable. I hope you enjoyed this personal and practical look at what it means to build not just a business, but a legacy. As always, thank you for tuning into the Collision Vision. Please do me a personal favor, hit that follow button and give this episode or any other that jumps out to you a share with your network. There might just be someone who could take a ton of value from it. On behalf of the Auto Body News team and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.